The Space Academy ship drifted across the dark side of a quiet star. Inside its main hall, young explorers moved around like they owned the place. They were loud. They were bored. They were waiting for their next training cycle to begin. Most of them stood in groups, talking about missions, future ranks, and how they would one day command fleets. Almost no one paid attention to the far corner of the hall, where an old piano rested under dim blue lights. It was a rare item on a ship like this. Most saw it as decoration, something left behind from an earlier era when humans carried pieces of Earth with them for comfort. One person did look at it, though. A girl with calm eyes and quiet steps. Her name was Lena. She was not the strongest in her class. She was not the fastest. She was not the loudest either. Many on the ship acted as if she were invisible most of the time. But today she walked slowly toward the piano, as if something pulled her there. The hall was buzzing, but she carried herself like the noise belonged to another world. Few trainees noticed her and began whispering. They knew she liked music. They knew she always looked at that piano when she passed by. But they never saw her brave enough to touch it. They joked that she would never dare. One of them pointed at her and laughed a little too loudly, making others join in. She heard them, but she did not change her pace. Lena reached the instrument and touched the edge of the smooth surface. It felt cold because of the ship's temperature control. She could see her own faint reflection on its polished panel. She took a slow breath. For a moment, she let her mind drift back to Earth, to the small town where she grew up, and to the little music room her mother used to clean every weekend. There was a piano there, too. She learned to play by ear before she ever learned to read sheet music. It was her way to think. It was her way to heal. Out here on a ship filled with noise and steel, touching this piano felt like touching home. Behind her, a voice rose from the group that had been watching her. It was sharp and mocking. It told her that she should not try to play because nobody wanted to hear her. Another voice told her the ship needed space, not useless melody. A third voice made a joke about her soft hands and how she should stick to simple tasks instead of trying to act special. A few laughed. They were not evil. They were just young and careless, and they did not know what her heart carried. Lena sat on the bench anyway. She placed her fingers on the keys and felt a tiny tremble run up her arms. She could leave. She could stand up and walk away, and no one would say her name again. But this time, she did not want to hide. Something inside her felt ready to rise. She pressed one key. A soft note echoed through the hall. Some heads turned. A few of the trainees laughed again, as if that single note proved they were right about her. More people walked in. The hall slowly filled. The hum of voices grew louder. Lena did not move. She kept her hands still above the keys. She knew she should begin before her courage slipped away. She closed her eyes. For a moment, she felt only silence around her. Then she began to play. The first melody rose softly. It floated through the air like a thin ribbon of light. It was gentle but steady, like footsteps in snow. Lena let her hands glide across the keys. Each note grew stronger, spreading through the hall, bouncing off the metal walls and drifting through the wide space above the heads of the trainees. She played with a calm focus that made the instrument come alive in her hands. It was not flawless, but it was full of heart, and that made every sound feel warm. The voices in the room paused. Then they faded. No one told them to be quiet. No one held up a hand for silence. It was the music itself that asked them to listen. People turned toward the piano one by one. Someone stopped in mid-sentence and stared. Another trainee froze while drinking water, lowering the cup slowly. The group that had teased her fell quiet. They looked at each other as if they suddenly felt smaller. The melody changed. It rose higher, moving from gentle steps into a wide wave of emotion. Lena had learned this piece long ago, but now it felt new. Out here among the stars, the sound carried a different meaning. She played as if the music could fill all the empty places inside her that she had never dared to show. Every motion of her fingers told a story of patience, hope, and the quiet strength she always held inside. The hall fell silent except for the piano. Across the room stood an officer who had come to make an announcement. She stopped walking and listened too. She had seen many young explorers show off their skills. She had watched students brag about strategy, speed, and strength. But music was different. It reached the parts of the heart that training drills could not touch. She watched Lena with new respect. Lena played on. Her eyes stayed closed. Her fingers moved faster now, crossing patterns like two bright threads, weaving one long line. The sound carried through the hall like sunlight breaking through clouds. It felt alive. It felt human. It felt like something no machine could copy. This was one of the reasons the Academy kept this old piano on board. It reminded everyone that the greatest power humans carried into space was not only knowledge, but also emotion. The melody shifted again. It sank softer, as if settling into a calm sea. Lena opened her eyes. She saw every face turn toward her. Some looked confused. Some looked amazed. Some looked guilty for how they had teased her only moments ago. But she did not play to shame them. She played because she needed to. She played because she wanted them to feel what she felt. She wanted them to understand that she belonged here too. The ship lights dimmed to their evening level. The soft blue glow highlighted her hands as they moved across the keys. People held their breath as if the sound itself was fragile and might vanish if they exhaled too loudly. Even the ventilation hum seemed to quiet. The entire room felt like it rested inside a bubble of sound. Lena reached the final part of the piece. Her fingers slowed. The last notes drifted upward like leaves, carried by a gentle breeze. They lingered in the air a moment longer, echoing softly against the walls. When she lifted her hands, the hall remained silent. No one moved. No one spoke. Then a single person clapped dot and another dot, then more. The hall erupted into applause, so loud it shook Lena from her stillness. She looked around and saw people smiling. Some looked apologetic. Some looked inspired. They cheered not because they were forced to, but because her music had touched them. The officer stepped forward. She waited until the applause softened. She asked Lena how long she had played. Lena answered in a quiet voice that she had learned when she was young. The officer nodded and then raised her voice so everyone could hear. She told them that what Lena did just now embodied the heart of the Academy. She explained that exploration was not only about engines and weapons. It was also about connection, empathy, and the courage to express oneself even in a room full of doubters. A few trainees who had teased her earlier walked toward her. They looked unsure of what to say. One of them said they did not know she could play like that. Another said they should not have made jokes. Lena nodded politely. She did not hold anger toward them. She understood that sometimes people acted out of ignorance, not malice. Her music had shown them something sure about her than any words could. The officer then surprised everyone. She announced that the Academy wanted to include live human performances in future diplomatic events with new species. Music had been proven to build trust where words failed. She asked Lena if she would consider joining the cultural envoy group. The hall gasped. It was one of the highest honors on the ship. Lena hesitated. She looked at the piano. She looked at the crowd. Then she said yes. Over the next days, the story spread. People who had missed the moment asked her to play again. Some trainees asked her to teach them simple melodies. The hall that once echoed with loud chatter now often held small groups listening quietly as she practiced. Even those who did not understand music well found comfort in it. Lena trained hard for her new role. She studied human songs from different eras. She learned how rhythm affected emotion in species that used sound differently from humans. She practiced long hours, sometimes early in the morning when the rest of the ship slept. Her hands grew stronger. Her style grew clearer. Yet she stayed humble. She always remembered the day she first sat at the piano while others laughed. She remembered how fragile her courage felt. That memory kept her grounded about the day of the envoy mission arrived. The Academy ship met with a neutral group of travelers near a quiet moon. These travelers valued harmony and communication above all else, but had grown distant from human crews in recent cycles. The envoy team hoped music would open a new door. Lena felt nervous as she stepped into the meeting hall. The travelers stood on the far side, silent, their expressions unreadable. The officer introduced the human envoy team. She then gestured toward Lena. She explained that the young pianist represented the emotional spirit of her people. The travelers listened without visible reaction. Lena approached the piano placed at the center of the hall. She sat and closed her eyes for a moment. She remembered the Academy Hall. She remembered the teasing. She remembered how the music rose above all that and changed the room. She let that memory fill her with strength. Then she played. Her melody floated into the hall like warm light. She chose a piece that carried hope and calm. The travelers tilted their heads. They did not blink. They did not move. But their energy shifted. Lena kept going. Her hands moved with steady confidence. Every note carried her intention. Every sound reached for understanding. By the time she finished, the hall stood in stillness. Then one of the travelers stepped forward. In a soft tone, they thanked her. They said her music revealed the sincerity of her people more clearly than any speech they had heard. They agreed to reopen cultural exchanges with the Academy. The envoy team broke into quiet relief. The officer nodded at Lena with genuine pride. She knew this success would become part of the Academy's history, and she also knew who had made it possible. When Lena returned to the Academy ship, the hall filled again, not with teasing, not with laughter aimed at her, but with warm welcome. People clapped as she walked past. Some asked when she would play next. Some thanked her for representing them so well. Lena did not see herself as a hero. She saw herself as a person who loved music. But humans across the ship now saw her as proof of something bigger. They saw how one human, with nothing but courage and melody, could shift hearts even in a cold metal hall deep in space. They saw how music carried a strength no armor could match. They saw how one quiet person could remind them why humans explored the stars in the first place. Because humans carried emotion. Because humans carried connection. Because humans carried stories. And sometimes all it took to quiet a whole room was one girl and her piano.